You touched on Canada and the different states' relationship over trade. Would you accept that Canada is a federal state and that the administrations there are federal government? Scotland is a devolved state, so there is there's a difference between a devolved administration where powers are reserved to Westminster and a federal system. So are you suggesting that we should be looking to the UK either perhaps moving towards a federal structure if we're going to, and that, no, it's a serious question. Okay. You've looked at a federal example. Are you suggesting that we should be moving towards a federal structure rather than a devolved one? Because in a devolved situation, trade is reserved.
No, absolutely, I appreciate that. I think there's a number of different strands there. We've looked at examples that we think we can learn from. The fact whether it's devolved or federal or neither of those is interesting, but we've looked at the structures that are there to pick out the best aspects of that. In terms of the other question, which is obviously completely outside the scope of what we're talking about today, then I think our position on the constitutional future of Scotland is clear. I think that a federal solution in the UK is problematic to arrive at because of the supremacy of the UK Parliament, and without a written constitution, frankly, I'm struggling how you could implement a federal system in the UK. And I think good luck with trying to get that through a UK Parliament that sees itself as sovereign and above everybody else in all other matters.
Well, the UK Parliament is actually a sovereign Parliament. I don't think we can argue with that. What would you say?
In a federal system, that sovereignty would be divided amongst the
What would you say to people who might argue that what you're actually doing is putting forward an argument to support independence rather than looking at the system and seeing where it could work?
Well, you're jumping all over the place, so from devolution to federal.
No,
to
I'm not jumping. I'm simply asking the question. What would you say to people who would say that the argument that you're putting forward for a different structure is not because there is inherently anything wrong with the present structure, but simply because you want to make an argument for independence and a structure that suits that?
Well, I think your first question puts the lie to that, because you've just demonstrated that.
The
solution that we put forward works adequately in a federal system where the Canadian provinces, for example, aren't independent countries in their own right. So it works perfectly well in a unitary state, and it would work perfectly well in the UK if we chose to go down that route.
If it chose to go down the federalist?
No, if we choose to go down the route of taking on board seriously what we are proposing in our paper, having a structure that takes on board the requirements and interests of the different parts of the UK.
So do you not think that there is a responsibility on members of Parliament from Scotland to represent Scotland's interests in trade, and on the Secretary of State for Scotland to represent Scotland's interests in trade?
Well, there is, but there's also a requirement on the Scottish Government to do so as well, and that's our focus, is making sure that happens. And
it's not trade then, it's the responsibility of the Scottish Government?
Well, as we said before, trade is a reserved matter, but the implications and the consequences of those trade deals impact on many devolved aspects, be that environmental, be it employment, be it there's a whole range of aspects where, be it the health service, be it there's a whole range where those complex trade deals in the modern world are far more than just to do with goods and services, and they do impact on devolved administrations. But there's also a duty on the Scottish Government in our drive to do the best to build up Scotland's economy, to protect the sectors that are clearly very important in Scotland.
Okay, thank you.